Here you go, Dad. Happy Father's Day. Lisa tossed a small envelope across the dining table with the casual indifference of someone disposing of a gum wrapper. The envelope skidded across the polished oak surface, nearly toppling Thomas's water glass. If you win anything, remember I get half, she added with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. Thomas Wilson smiled politely as he caught the envelope before it fell into his lap. His weathered fingers, marked by decades of hard work, carefully opened it to find a $5 lottery ticket. The cheap paper felt flimsy between his calloused fingertips, and the numbers blurred slightly as he stared at them. Very thoughtful, sweetheart, he managed, his smile never reaching his eyes. The disappointment wasn't about the gift's monetary value, but the thoughtlessness behind it. Oh, but wait, Lisa interrupted, her voice rising with theatrical excitement. I haven't given Richard his gift yet. Thomas watched as his daughter reached behind her chair and produced an elegantly wrapped package. The box was covered in shimmering silver paper that caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through his modest dining room windows. The ribbon alone looked expensive, its silky texture a stark contrast to the crumpled lottery ticket in his hand. Richard Bennett, Lisa's father-in-law, straightened in his chair, his perfectly pressed designer shirt stretching across his broad shoulders. He had the confident posture of someone who had never worried about money a day in his life. His manicured hands reached for the package with a sense of entitlement that made Thomas's stomach tighten. These, Lisa announced with flourish as Richard carefully removed the wrapping paper, are Caribbean cruise tickets. Premium suite, all expenses covered, 14 days of luxury. She paused for effect. They cost nearly $15,000, but you deserve it for everything you've done for us. The weight of the lottery ticket in Thomas's hand suddenly felt microscopic. He watched Richard examine the tickets with undisguised satisfaction, his manicured fingers tracing the gold embossing along the edges. The cruise line's premium logo gleamed under the dining room light. Now this is what I call a proper Father's Day gift, Richard said, his voice carrying that particular tone of approval reserved for expensive things. His eyes met Thomas's across the table. Your daughter has excellent taste. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. Other family members shifted uncomfortably, suddenly finding their plates fascinating. Thomas's sister Barbara cleared her throat while his nephew Michael studied his hands. The tension in the room was palpable, wrapping around them all like an invisible fog. Dad always said actions speak louder than words, Lisa replied, her laugh bright and sharp. She glanced at Richard, and something passed between them, a look that made Thomas's chest tighten. Some people show love through grand gestures. Others. She gestured vaguely at Thomas's lottery ticket. Thomas held the paper steady, though his hands wanted to shake. The dining room suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in around him. His modest home, once a source of pride, now seemed shabby through the lens of his daughter's obvious disdain. I appreciate the thought, Lisa. Really, he said quietly. Oh, it's just a little joke, she said, waving dismissively. But seriously, if you hit the jackpot, I expect my cut. I paid for it, after all. Richard chuckled, the sound low and satisfied. Perhaps next year Thomas will surprise us all with something more substantial. The afternoon sunlight highlighted every uncomfortable expression around the table. Barbara's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Michael's wife, Sarah, suddenly became fascinated with the family photos on Thomas's walls. Even Thomas's granddaughter Emily, usually buried in her phone, looked up with confusion. These cruise tickets, Richard continued, fanning them out like playing cards, represent 2 weeks in the Caribbean. Premium suite, private balcony, all meals included at 5-star restaurants. The kind of experience that creates lasting memories. Thomas nodded, his throat tight. Sounds wonderful. It is wonderful, Lisa agreed, reaching over to squeeze Richard's arm affectionately. Richard has always been there for us financially. He helped us buy our house, paid for Emily's private school tuition, even covers our country club membership. He's earned something special. The lottery ticket felt like it might disintegrate in Thomas's grip. He remembered the double shifts he'd worked at the manufacturing plant, the overtime hours on the assembly line, all to pay for Lisa's college education. The nights he'd fallen asleep in his chair, too tired to make it to bed after working 16-hour days to afford her textbooks. The second mortgage he'd taken out to help her start her first business venture that had failed within a year, leaving him to cover the debts. Well, he said quietly, I hope you both enjoy the cruise. We will, Richard said, slipping the tickets back into their box with ceremonial care. This is how families should treat each other with generosity and respect. The conversation moved on, but Thomas remained focused on the tiny piece of paper in his hands. $5. The same amount he used to give Lisa for ice cream when she was 7, back when that small gesture could light up her entire face with genuine joy. When had that changed? When had his love become insufficient? After dinner, they left as quickly as they'd come. Car doors slammed outside, engines started, and voices faded into the evening air. Thomas remained at his table, still holding the lottery ticket, watching the last of the sunlight disappear from his dining room. The house settled into the familiar quiet of his solitary life. He looked around at the family photos on his walls, the modest furniture he'd bought piece by piece over the years, the careful decorations he'd set up for a Father's Day that was already over. Every item in this house represented years of hard work, sacrifice, and careful saving. Yet somehow, in his daughter's eyes, it had all amounted to nothing. The lottery ticket lay beside his empty coffee cup, forgotten in the morning light filtering through his kitchen window. Thomas stared at his laptop screen, numbers swimming before his eyes as he reviewed his monthly bank statement. It was a ritual he'd maintained for 40 years, first as a young father counting every penny, now as a careful retiree protecting what little he had. His finger traced down the list of transactions, utility bills, grocery store purchases, the modest amount he'd spent on Father's Day dinner ingredients. Everything accounted for, everything expected until he reached a line that made his coffee grow cold in his mouth. Premium travel services, $14,850. He blinked, certain he'd misread. The amount stared back at him unchanged. His hands trembled as he cross-referenced the date with his calendar. 1 week ago, Thursday, he'd been nowhere near a travel agency. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Lisa still had authorized access to his account, a precaution he'd set up years ago when her mother died, in case of emergencies. He'd forgotten about it completely. His phone felt heavy in his shaking hands as he dialed her number. Each ring echoed in his quiet kitchen, mixing with the sound of his own heartbeat. "Hello, Dad." Her voice carried that particular tone of bored politeness she used when he interrupted her busy life. "Lisa, I'm looking at my bank statement." He tried to keep his voice steady. "There's a charge for over $14,800 from premium travel services." Silence, then a laugh, light and dismissive. "Oh, that. I bought Richard his cruise tickets. He deserves something nice for once." The words hit Thomas like a slap. You took nearly $15,000 from my account without asking." "I didn't take anything, Dad," she replied, her tone hardening. "I used family money for a family gift. You wouldn't have spent it anyway. It's just sitting there." "Lisa, that's theft." His voice broke on the word. "You stole from me." "It's not stealing when it's family money," she snapped. "Richard has always been there for us financially. He helped us when we needed it. This is just returning the favor." Thomas gripped the phone tighter. "I'm your father, Lisa. I raised you alone after your mother died. I worked double shifts to put you through college. And Richard helped us both move beyond that," she interrupted coldly. "He's shown us what real success looks like, what it means to be generous, to live well, to give meaningful gifts instead of." She paused, and Thomas could hear her dismissive sigh. "Instead of lottery tickets." The cruelty in her voice left him speechless. This was his daughter, the little girl who used to fall asleep in his lap while he read her bedtime stories. The teenager who'd cried on his shoulder when her mother died. The young woman who'd once called him her hero. "Dad, are you there?" "I'm here," he whispered. "Look, I know you're upset, but think about it rationally. Richard earned this. He's successful. He's contributed to our family's well-being. He deserves recognition for everything he's done. And what about everything I've done?" Thomas asked, his voice barely audible. Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice was colder than he'd ever heard it. "You did what fathers are supposed to do." Richard went above and beyond. The line went dead. Thomas stared at the phone, the dial tone echoing in his empty kitchen like a funeral dirge. His hands shook as he set it down. The same hands that had held her as a baby, taught her to ride a bike, applauded at her graduation. He walked to his nightstand and grabbed the lottery ticket, the $5 joke she'd thrown at him like scraps to a dog. Even this pitiful gift had been bought with his own stolen money. The irony was so perfect it almost made him laugh. Instead, he crumpled the ticket in his fist and marched to the kitchen trash can. The paper made a satisfying thud as it hit the bottom, joining the coffee grounds and empty cans that represented his simple, apparently worthless life. The house felt smaller suddenly, the walls closer together. He needed air, needed to move, needed to be anywhere but in this place where his daughter's betrayal echoed off every surface. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, his legs carrying him down the familiar streets of his neighborhood. The morning air was crisp, filled with the sounds of suburban life. Lawnmowers starting up, children playing, neighbors calling greetings across fence lines. Mrs. Henderson waved from her garden, her arthritic hands gentle with her tomato plants. "Beautiful morning, Thomas." "Yes, it is," he replied automatically, though the day felt anything but beautiful. He walked past the Peterson house, where John was teaching his grandson to throw a baseball. The boy's laughter carried on the breeze, pure and uncomplicated. Thomas remembered teaching Lisa the same way, her small hands gripping the ball with determination, her face bright with joy when she finally made a perfect throw. When had that changed? When had his love become insufficient, his life something to be ashamed of? The questions followed him down Maple Street, past the corner market where he'd bought Lisa candy as a child, past the park where she'd played on summer afternoons. Every memory felt tainted now, viewed through the lens of what she'd become. His phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, hope fluttered in his chest. Maybe Lisa had reconsidered. Maybe she'd realized what she'd done. "Dad, I talked to Richard about the money situation. He thinks you're overreacting. It's not like you needed it for anything important. We'll pay you back when we can, maybe for Christmas. K." He stopped walking. Read the message again. Then a third time. "When we can?" As if $14,850 was pocket change. As if his financial security was negotiable. As if he should be grateful for the possibility of eventual repayment. The phone rang before he could respond. His sister Barbara's name appeared on the screen. "Thomas, are you okay? Lisa called me, said you were upset about some money thing. She stole $14,850 from my account, Barbara." The words came out flat, emotionless. "To buy her father-in-law a cruise." Silence. Then, what? She still had access to my account. She used it to buy Richard a $14,850 cruise for Father's Day. She gave me a $5 lottery ticket and told me half the winnings were hers. Jesus, Thomas, are you sure? Maybe there's some mistake. She admitted it. Said it wasn't really stealing because it was family money. He laughed bitterly. She said Richard deserved it because he's been generous to them. Unlike me, apparently. Barbara's voice softened with the kind of sympathy that made his chest ache. "Thomas, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she'd become so. I don't even know what to call it." "Cruel," he said simply. "She's become cruel." They talked for a few more minutes, Barbara offering to come over, to call Lisa herself, to help however she could. But there was nothing she could do. Nothing anyone could do. His daughter had shown him exactly what he meant to her, and no amount of intervention could change that truth. Thomas walked home slowly, his legs heavy with exhaustion that had nothing to do with physical exertion. The house felt different when he entered, smaller, shabbier, marked by the kind of poverty that comes from being seen through someone else's dismissive eyes. The trash can in his kitchen held the crumpled lottery ticket, a reminder of the joke that had started this whole nightmare. He stared at it for a long moment, remembering the weight of those $5 in his hand, the laughter in Lisa's voice as she tossed it across the table. Tomorrow, he would call the bank. He would revoke her access to his account, take the steps he should have taken years ago. But tonight, he would sit in his quiet house and mourn the daughter he'd lost, the relationship that had died somewhere along the way without his noticing. The lottery ticket remained in the trash, forgotten and worthless, while he grieved for something far more valuable that he'd already lost. But the next morning arrived with the kind of brutal clarity that follows a sleepless night. Thomas sat at his kitchen table, coffee growing cold, as he stared at the bank's phone number written on a piece of paper. His hands felt steady for the first time in 24 hours. First National Bank Customer Service. "This is Andrea. How can I help you?" "I need to revoke authorized access to my account," he said. "Someone has been making unauthorized purchases." The conversation was surprisingly simple. Andrea's voice carried professional sympathy as she walked him through the process. Within 15 minutes, Lisa's access was terminated. New security measures were in place, and Thomas felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the solid certainty of protecting himself. "Is there anything else I can help you with today, Mr. Wilson?" "No, that covers it. Thank you." He hung up and looked around his kitchen with new eyes. The modest space felt different, not shabby, but honest, clean. His gaze fell on the trash can, and he remembered the lottery ticket lying crumpled among the coffee grounds. The $5 joke that had started this whole mess, purchased with his own stolen money and thrown back at him like he was some kind of charity case. He walked over and stared down at the crumpled paper. Even this pathetic gesture had been bought with money taken from his account without permission. The irony was almost laughable. She'd stolen from him to buy him a gift, then claimed half the potential winnings. With sudden decisive anger, he grabbed the ticket and smoothed it out on his counter. The numbers stared back at him. 8, 17, 24, 31, 46. Power number 9. He memorized them, these digits that represented everything wrong with his relationship with his daughter. Then crumpled the paper again and threw it back in the trash with more force than necessary. The morning stretched ahead of him, empty and quiet. He needed to move, needed to clear his head, needed to be somewhere other than this kitchen where yesterday's betrayal still echoed off the walls. He grabbed his jacket and headed outside, letting his feet carry him down the familiar streets of his neighborhood. The morning air was crisp, filled with the sounds of honest work. Lawnmowers starting up, children playing, neighbors calling greetings across fence lines. Mrs. Henderson was in her garden again, her weathered hands gentle with her roses. She looked up as he passed, her smile warm and genuine. "Morning, Thomas. You're out early today." "Couldn't sleep," he said, pausing at her fence. "Thought a walk might help." She nodded knowingly. "Sometimes the best thinking happens when your feet are moving. My Gerald used to say that." Her late husband had been a good man, a factory worker like Thomas who'd worked with his hands and treated people with respect. The kind of man who understood that character mattered more than bank accounts. He was right about that, Thomas said. He continued walking past the Peterson house, where John was washing his car with his grandson's help. The boy was more interested in splashing water than cleaning, but John didn't seem to mind. Their laughter carried on the breeze, uncomplicated and pure. 2 blocks down, he passed the corner market where he'd bought Lisa candy as a child. The owner, Mr. Chen, was arranging fruit in his window display, each apple and orange placed with care. He'd been here for 30 years, serving the neighborhood with quiet dignity, never getting rich, but never compromising his principles either. These people understood something Lisa had forgotten, that there was honor in honest work, in treating people with respect, in building relationships based on something more substantial than financial gain. His phone buzzed with another text message. For a moment, hope fluttered in his chest again. Maybe Lisa had reconsidered. Maybe she'd realized what she'd done. "Dad, the bank card isn't working. Did you close the account? Call me ASAP." He deleted the message without responding and kept walking. The familiar streets of his neighborhood wrapped around him like a comfortable blanket, filled with the sounds and sights of people living honest lives. Whatever happened next, he would face it on his own terms, with his dignity intact. The trash can in his kitchen held the crumpled lottery ticket, forgotten and worthless, while he walked toward whatever came next, with his head held high. 3 days had passed since he'd taken control of his finances. 3 quiet days of morning coffee, simple meals, and the kind of peace that comes from knowing you've done the right thing. He was stirring scrambled eggs in his cast iron skillet when the phone shattered the silence with its shrill demand for attention. "Dad, what the hell did you do to my card?" Lisa's voice exploded through the receiver before he could even say hello. "It was declined at Nordstrom." "Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was?" Thomas set down his spatula carefully, his hand surprisingly steady. "I removed your access after you stole $14,850 from my account. I didn't steal anything." Her voice pitched higher, that familiar tone she'd used as a teenager when caught in a lie. "That money was for family, for someone who actually contributes to this family. You didn't ask permission, Lisa. You just took it." Through the phone, he could hear the rustle of shopping bags, the distant hum of mall traffic. She was calling him from the parking lot of whatever expensive store had just humiliated her. "I was standing there with an $800 handbag, Dad. $800. The sales associate ran my card 3 times before telling me in front of everyone that it was declined. Other customers were staring. I looked like some kind of common person who can't afford her purchases." The way she said common person made his chest tighten, as if being unable to afford $800 handbags was some kind of moral failing. "I'm sorry you were embarrassed," he said quietly, "but that doesn't change what you did." "What I did?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What I did was treat Richard with the respect he deserves, something you've never learned to do." Thomas carried the phone to his kitchen table, settling into the same chair where he discovered her theft just days before. "Lisa, I raised you. I worked 60-hour weeks to put you through college. I thought that counted for something. And Richard helped us move beyond all that, she snapped. He's shown us what real success looks like, what it means to be generous, not sitting on piles of money like some kind of miser. The accusation hit like a physical blow. 40 years of careful saving, of choosing generic groceries and driving used cars so he could provide for his family. And this was how she saw it. You're going to regret this decision, Dad. Her voice dropped to a tone he'd never heard before. Cold and calculating. You think you can humiliate me publicly and just walk away. You think there won't be consequences. Lisa, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm protecting myself. No, you're being selfish and petty and cruel. Each word landed with deliberate precision. But I won't let you get away with it. I have friends, Dad. People who matter in this community. People who understand what family loyalty actually means. The line went dead with a sharp click that echoed in his quiet kitchen. He set the phone down and returned to his eggs, but they'd gone cold in the pan. Even reheated, they tasted like ash. That evening, he tried to distract himself with television, flipping through channels without really watching. A nature documentary about wolves, a cooking show featuring elaborate desserts he'd never attempt, a news program discussing economic policies that felt irrelevant to his small world. His tablet sat on the coffee table, unopened since yesterday. He'd been avoiding social media, avoiding the temptation to check on Lisa's life from a distance, but curiosity finally won. He opened Facebook and scrolled through the usual collection of neighbor updates and distant cousin vacation photos. Then he saw it. Lisa's post sat at the top of his feed, accompanied by a photo of her looking devastated, her eyes red-rimmed with carefully applied tears. Having to write this breaks my heart, but I need support right now. My father has decided to cut off my access to what has always been our family money. After years of me being there for him, helping him through Mom's death, managing his affairs when he couldn't, he suddenly decided I'm not worthy of his trust. All because I bought Richard, who has been more of a father figure to our family than anyone, a gift with money that was sitting and used in an account. I never thought my own father could be so selfish and cruel. I'm honestly questioning everything I thought I knew about the man who raised me. The post had 47 likes and 23 comments. Thomas scrolled through them, his stomach churning with each sympathetic response. Oh my God, Lisa, I'm so sorry. Older people can become so paranoid about money. Your father should be grateful to have such a caring daughter. This is awful. Richard is such a wonderful man. He deserved that gift. Your dad is being ridiculous. Family money should benefit the whole family. Hang in there, honey. He closed the tablet and sat in his darkened living room, listening to the house settle around him. Somewhere in the kitchen trash lay the crumpled lottery ticket that had started this whole mess. The $5 joke that had revealed the truth about what he meant to his daughter. The following evening found him in the same chair, remote control resting loosely in his palm as he surfed channels with no particular purpose. The social media aftermath had been consuming his thoughts all day. Neighbors who suddenly avoided eye contact, the cashier at the grocery store who'd looked at him with newfound suspicion. Lisa's narrative was spreading, and he was losing the battle for his own reputation without even fighting. Click. A cooking show featuring complicated French pastries. Click. A sitcom from the 90s that he'd seen countless times. Click. Local news discussing city budget issues. Click. The state lottery drawing program. Good evening, Ohio. Welcome to tonight's Powerball drawing where we have a rollover jackpot of $137 million. He almost changed the channel, but something about the announcer's cheerful voice made him pause. Maybe it was the absurdity of it all. Here he was being called a greedy miser for protecting his modest savings while someone was about to win more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. Tonight's winning numbers are. The announcer's voice took on that ceremonial tone reserved for momentous occasions. 8, 17, 24, 31, 46. And the Powerball is 9. His hand froze on the remote. Those numbers sounded familiar. Disturbingly familiar. He grabbed a pen from the coffee table and scribbled the numbers on the back of an envelope as the announcer repeated them. 8, 17, 24, 31, 46. Powerball 9. His heart began racing before his mind fully caught up. He knew those numbers. He'd seen them recently, stared at them long enough to memorize them in a moment of anger and irony. The lottery ticket. The crumpled piece of paper he'd thrown away in disgust 3 days ago. He stumbled to the kitchen, his legs unsteady beneath him. The trash can sat innocently by the counter, filled with the detritus of solitary living coffee grounds, empty cans, food scraps. He plunged his hands into the mess, digging through banana peels and soggy paper towels, searching for a small piece of paper that might change everything. His fingers found it near the bottom, stuck to the side of a yogurt container. The lottery ticket, stained with coffee grounds and wrinkled beyond recognition, but still readable. He carried it to the kitchen sink and carefully rinsed off the worst of the debris, his hands shaking as he unfolded it. 8, 17, 24, 31, 46. Powerball 9. Perfect. Every single number matched. He sat down hard in his kitchen chair, staring at the damaged ticket in disbelief. The $5 joke that Lisa had thrown at him like scraps to a dog. The gift she'd bought with his own stolen money and then claimed half ownership of. The piece of garbage he'd discarded in anger. It was worth $137 million. He called the lottery hotline with trembling fingers, following the automated prompts to verify the winning numbers. The mechanical voice confirmed what he already knew. The winning Powerball numbers for tonight's drawing are 8, 17, 24, 31, 46, with Powerball 9. The jackpot amount is $137 million. He hung up and looked around his modest kitchen with new eyes. The outdated appliances, the worn linoleum floor, the simple table where he ate his solitary meals. All of it suddenly felt surreal, like a movie set about to be struck and replaced with something entirely different. The lottery ticket lay on his table, still damp from its rescue from the garbage, still creased with the force of his angry disposal. Lisa's voice echoed in his memory. If you win, remember half is mine. He barely slept that night, alternating between checking the lottery ticket for the 100th time and staring at his ceiling in disbelief. By morning, he'd convinced himself it had to be a mistake, a hallucination brought on by stress and social isolation. But the numbers remained the same, and the ticket, despite its journey through his garbage, was undeniably real. The Ohio Lottery Commission offices in downtown Columbus were more impressive than he'd expected. Glass and steel reaching toward gray March clouds, with security guards and an atmosphere of serious business. He clutched the ticket in a plastic sleeve, his palms sweating despite the cool morning air. Mr. Wilson? The lottery official, a woman named Janet Ortiz, smiled professionally as she examined his bedraggled ticket. This is quite a story. Found it in your trash. Threw it away in anger, he admitted. My daughter bought it as a Father's Day gift, but the circumstances were complicated. Janet nodded without judgment, placing the ticket under some kind of specialized scanner. We see all kinds of situations here. The important thing is verification, and I'm happy to tell you, Mr. Wilson, that this is indeed a winning ticket. The words seemed to echo in the sterile office space. He gripped the arms of his chair, afraid he might float away. However, Janet continued, our verification process takes 48 hours for prizes of this magnitude. We need to confirm the ticket's authenticity through multiple security measures, prepare the legal documentation, and arrange for the payout process. He nodded numbly, signing papers and providing identification, barely processing the cascade of information about taxes, payment options, and publicity procedures. By the time he left the lottery office, his head was swimming with figures and legal terminology. But one fact remained crystal clear. He was worth $137 million. The drive home passed in a blur of familiar streets that suddenly felt foreign. Everything looked the same: the corner grocery store, Mrs. Henderson's rose garden, the elementary school where Lisa had learned to read. But he felt like an alien visitor observing someone else's life. He'd been home less than an hour when Lisa's car screeched into his driveway. She burst through his front door without knocking, her face flushed with excitement and determination. Dad, I heard about the lottery. Some woman at my office knows someone who works at the commission. She saw your name on the winner's list. Thomas remained seated at his kitchen table, the official lottery paperwork spread before him like evidence in a trial. Hello, Lisa. Don't hello me. She practically vibrated with energy. Do you realize what this means? We're millionaires. Remember what I said? Half is mine. That was a gift, Lisa. His voice came out calmer than he felt. You can't take back a gift, she insisted, her expression shifting, the excitement giving way to something harder. We had an agreement. Everyone at that dinner heard me say it. Witnesses, Dad. Legal witnesses. You threw that ticket at me like garbage, he said quietly. You bought it with money you stole from my account. It was never about sharing anything. Stole. Her voice pitched upward. I used family money for a family purpose, and now you're trying to cheat me out of what's rightfully mine. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The little girl who used to climb into his lap for bedtime stories had been replaced by someone he didn't recognize, someone whose first thought upon hearing of his good fortune was how much of it belonged to her. "The ticket was a gift," he repeated. "Whatever your intentions, whatever you said, it became mine the moment you gave it to me. I'll sue you." She slammed her hand on his table, making the lottery papers jump. "I'll prove that ticket belongs to me. I'll take you to court and make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are." "And what kind of man am I, Lisa?" She paused, her chest heaving with anger. For a moment, he saw something flicker across her face, recognition, maybe, or shame, but it passed quickly, replaced by cold determination. "The kind who steals from his own daughter." She stormed out as dramatically as she'd arrived, her parting shot hanging in the air like smoke. He listened to her car engine roar to life and fade into the distance, then looked down at the official documentation confirming his lottery win. $137 million. More money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. And all he felt was tired. He woke to the sound of his phone buzzing incessantly on the nightstand. 15 missed calls, 12 text messages, and a cascade of social media notifications that made his stomach lurch before he was fully conscious. The first Facebook post appeared at 6:47 a.m., timestamped just as most people were starting their day with coffee and morning news. "Urgent. My father has stolen my lottery ticket and is claiming the entire jackpot for himself. This is the same man who cut off my access to family money and publicly humiliated me. The ticket was my gift to him with the clear understanding that winnings would be shared." This is elder abuse in reverse, when elderly people become so obsessed with money they'll cheat their own children. "Please share this post. I need people to know the truth about what's happening." The post included a photo of him from last Christmas, looking serious and somewhat stern in his holiday sweater. Below it, comments were already accumulating like digital wildfire. But Lisa hadn't stopped there. Her Instagram featured a tearful video of her sitting in her car, mascara running down her cheeks as she spoke directly to the camera. "I don't usually air family business like this, but I'm desperate. My own father has stolen my lottery ticket, literally stolen it, and now he's claiming the entire $137 million for himself. I bought that ticket as a Father's Day gift. I jokingly said half is mine because that's what you do with family, right? You share." But apparently my father heard that as a legal challenge instead of a daughter's love. Richard had coordinated his own campaign across LinkedIn and Facebook, his posts carrying the weight of professional credibility. Witnessing financial elder abuse is devastating, but reverse elder abuse is equally damaging to families. When elderly individuals become obsessed with money to the point of betraying their children's trust and generosity, we all lose. My wife is heartbroken by her father's greed. The lottery ticket was purchased as a gift with clear verbal agreements about sharing, yet he claims exclusive ownership. This behavior destroys families and communities. His phone rang again. "Barbara, Thomas, what in God's name is happening? My neighbor just called asking if you really stole Lisa's lottery ticket. Social media is going crazy." He explained the situation as simply as he could, but even to his own ears, it sounded complicated. Yes, Lisa had bought the ticket. Yes, she'd made jokes about sharing winnings. Yes, he had actually won. No, he didn't believe he owed her anything. "But Thomas," Barbara said gently, "she did buy it for you. With money she stole from my account," he reminded her. By noon, the story had gone viral in their small corner of the internet. Local Facebook groups buzzed with debates about family loyalty, legal obligations, and moral responsibilities. The neighborhood app next door featured heated discussions about the greedy lottery winner on Maple Street. He made the mistake of reading comments on Lisa's posts. "This is disgusting. How can a father do this to his daughter? Lawyers need to get involved. This is theft, plain and simple. I know this family. The daughter has always been so generous and kind. The father has always been weird about money. Team Lisa. No way should an old man keep money that belongs to his daughter." Richard's professional network had mobilized, too. Colleagues from his investment firm shared his posts with serious commentary about family values and financial ethics. Their shared social circle, people Thomas had known for years, publicly supported Lisa's version of events. He closed his laptop and walked to his kitchen window, looking out at the neighborhood he'd called home for 30 years. 3 neighbors stood near his mailbox, clearly discussing the situation. When they saw him at the window, they scattered like guilty children. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "CHANNEL 6 wants to interview you about the lottery controversy. Can you call us?" Another message. Columbus Dispatch seeking comment on family lottery dispute. And another. Legal representation available for lottery ticket disputes. Free consultation. He turned off his phone and sat in his quiet kitchen. The official lottery paperwork still spread across his table like evidence of his guilt. Outside, his neighbors whispered and speculated, their judgment delivered through social media comments and careful distances. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was worth $137 million, and he'd never felt more alone in his life. The morning light filtered through his kitchen window as he spread printed copies of Lisa's social media posts across his table like evidence in a trial. Each comment, each share, each supportive response felt like another nail in the coffin of his reputation. The coffee grew cold in his cup as he read through the digital assassination of his character. His landline phone rang, cutting through the silence with its old-fashioned mechanical bell. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but something about its pattern suggested a business line. "Mr. Wilson? This is Harold Johnson, Richard's father." The voice was measured, professional, carrying the kind of authority that came from years of boardroom negotiations. "I believe we need to talk." Thomas gripped the receiver tighter. "I'm not sure what there is to discuss, Mr. Johnson. There's quite a lot, actually." A pause, then. "Could we meet this morning? Say, Murphy's Diner on 5th Street in an hour." Murphy's Diner was a modest family restaurant where Thomas sometimes went for their Saturday morning special. The kind of place where Richard would never be caught dead. "May I ask what this is about?" "The lottery ticket," Harold said simply, "and what I witnessed on Father's Day." His heart hammered against his ribs. "You were there." "I was indeed." "1 hour, Mr. Wilson." The line went dead, leaving him staring at the phone in confusion. Richard's father wanting to meet about the lottery ticket could only mean trouble. Maybe they were coordinating their legal strategy. Or perhaps Harold was coming to pressure him into settling with Lisa. He almost didn't go, but curiosity won over caution. Murphy's Diner occupied a corner lot that had hosted restaurants for 50 years. Red vinyl booths, checkered linoleum floors, and the kind of coffee that could wake the dead. He spotted Harold immediately. His tailored navy suit stood out like a peacock among sparrows in the humble establishment. Harold rose when he saw him, extending a well-manicured hand in greeting. "Mr. Wilson, thank you for coming." They slid into a booth near the window where morning light illuminated the deep lines around Harold's eyes. The waitress, a motherly woman named Dolores who'd been serving coffee here since Thomas was in his 40s, poured to cups without being asked. "I witnessed the entire gift exchange on Father's Day," Harold began without preamble. "Every word, every gesture. Your daughter handed you that lottery ticket and explicitly called it your Father's Day gift." Thomas studied his face, searching for signs of deception or manipulation. "She's claiming we had an agreement about splitting any winnings." Harold's expression hardened. "That's simply not what happened. I watched her throw that ticket across the table with a dismissive laugh. There was no negotiation, no agreement, no verbal contract. It was a gift, pure and simple." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through Facebook with the efficiency of someone who'd built a business empire in the digital age. "What my son and daughter-in-law are doing is unconscionable. They're destroying your reputation with lies." "You're Richard's father," Thomas said carefully. "Why would you go against your own son?" Harold's laugh was bitter. "Because I raised him to have integrity, and he's forgotten everything I taught him. This lottery situation has revealed something about Richard that deeply disappoints me." He showed Thomas his phone screen where he'd begun typing a lengthy Facebook post. "I'm going to set the record straight. My name carries weight in this community, Mr. Wilson. People know I don't lie about business matters, and this is exactly that, a matter of legal ownership and ethical behavior." Thomas read over his shoulder as Harold refined his statement. "As a witness to the Father's Day gathering at Thomas Wilson's home, I feel compelled to address the current social media controversy. I personally observed Lisa Bennett present a lottery ticket to her father as a Father's Day gift. There was no negotiation, no agreement about sharing winnings, and no conditions attached to the gift. Mr. Wilson is the rightful owner of that ticket and any winnings it may have generated. The current social media campaign against him is based on false information, and I cannot remain silent while a good man's reputation is being destroyed by members of my own family." "You don't have to do this," Thomas said quietly. "Yes, I do." Harold's finger hovered over the post button. "My son has forgotten what it means to be a man of honor. Perhaps public embarrassment will remind him." He posted the statement, and immediately his phone began buzzing with notifications. Within minutes, Comments appeared from people in Columbus's business community, colleagues who knew Harold's reputation for honesty and fair dealing. "This changes everything," Thomas breathed, watching the tide of public opinion shift in real time. Harold pocketed his phone and looked at him directly. "Mr. Wilson, I built my business on integrity. I can't watch my son destroy that legacy with lies and manipulation." They sat in comfortable silence, watching normal people go about their Saturday morning routines. Families ordering pancakes, elderly couples sharing the newspaper, teenagers texting while their parents tried to engage them in conversation. Life continuing normally while his world transformed. "The truth has a funny way of surfacing," Harold said finally. "Sometimes it just needs the right person to speak it." They shook hands outside the diner, Harold's grip firm and reassuring. As he walked toward his black Mercedes, Thomas remained by his modest sedan, feeling something he hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. 2 weeks later, the phone call he'd been waiting for finally came. "Mr. Wilson, this is Janet Ortiz from the Ohio Lottery Commission. Your verification process is complete, and we'd like to invite you to our formal check presentation ceremony tomorrow morning." "A ceremony?" he asked, still processing the magnitude of what was happening. "We offer winners the choice between a private meeting and a public presentation. Given the recent interest in your case, we thought you might prefer the transparency of a public ceremony." He thought about Lisa's social media campaign, about the whispered conversations that followed him through grocery stores, about the neighbors who no longer made eye contact. "Yes, I'd like the public ceremony." "Excellent. 10 a.m. at our Columbus headquarters. There will be media present, so dress appropriately. And Mr. Wilson, congratulations. This is going to change your life." That evening, he laid out his best clothes. A navy blue suit he'd bought for his wife's funeral 8 years ago, a white shirt that still had the crisp edges of professional pressing, and the tie Lisa had given him for Christmas 5 years back, before everything changed. The lottery office buzzed with activity when he arrived. Television crews adjusted lighting equipment. Photographers tested angles. Lottery officials bustled around with clipboards and official documents. He felt like an actor who'd wandered onto someone else's movie set. "Mr. Wilson," Janet Ortiz approached with a warm smile, ready to become a millionaire. The actual ceremony was surprisingly formal. A backdrop featuring the Ohio Lottery logo, an oversized check that took 2 people to hold, and enough camera flashes to light up a stadium. When Janet announced him as the winner of the $137 million jackpot, the applause felt surreal. "This is certainly unexpected," he said into the microphone, his voice carrying better than he'd hoped. "I plan to use this blessing responsibly to help others, to pursue dreams I'd put aside, and to live with dignity." The questions from reporters came rapidly. How did it feel to win? What were his plans? Would he quit working? He answered as honestly as he could, focusing on gratitude and responsibility rather than the family drama that had brought him here. Then, through the crowd of media personnel, he saw them. Lisa Ann Richard pushed through the gathering, her face flushed with determination and desperation. She wore the kind of outfit she reserved for important occasions, a designer dress that probably cost more than his monthly pension. "Stop," she called out, her voice cutting through the professional atmosphere like a knife. "That's my ticket. We had an agreement." Security personnel moved immediately, but Lisa's voice carried over their intervention. "Everyone here needs to know that ticket was mine. He's stealing from his own daughter." The cameras, which had been focused on him and the ceremonial check, swiveled toward the commotion. This was the kind of drama that television news lived for. "Ma'am, you need to step back from the ceremony area," a security guard said firmly but politely. Thomas looked directly at Lisa, feeling calmer than he had in months. "Lisa, please don't do this here." But she was beyond reason, gesticulating wildly as Richard tried to pull her back. "I bought that ticket. I said half was mine. Everyone at that dinner heard me." A reporter thrust a microphone toward him. "Mr. Wilson, can you comment on this family dispute?" "The ticket was a Father's Day gift from my daughter," he said clearly, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding nearby. "Mr. Harold Johnson, who was present at the dinner, has already confirmed the circumstances of that gift. That's all there is to it. What do you plan to do with the money?" Another reporter asked. He thought about Lisa screaming in the background, about the months of manipulation and betrayal, about the years he'd spent enabling her worst impulses out of misguided love. "I plan to help others who deserve it," he said. "I want to start a business I've dreamed about for years, and I intend to live with the kind of integrity that makes a person worthy of good fortune. The ceremony concluded with handshakes and official paperwork. While he was inside completing the final details, Lisa and Richard stood by their BMW in the parking lot, arguing with each other. He could see Richard's gestures growing more animated, his voice rising to match hers. Thomas walked to his car carrying the ceremonial check and official documentation that made him one of the wealthiest men in Ohio. As he drove away, he glimpsed them in his rearview mirror, still arguing beside their expensive car, their relationship fracturing under the weight of their own greed. For the first time in months, he smiled. The next morning, he was sitting at his kitchen table with the newspaper spread before him, reading about his lottery win in black and white print, when he heard a car door slam outside. Through his window, he saw Lisa walking up his driveway, but her demeanor was completely different from yesterday's aggressive confrontation. She moved slowly, almost hesitantly, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Instead of her usual bold entrance, she knocked softly on his door, 3 gentle taps that sounded almost apologetic. He opened the door to find her eyes red-rimmed and puffy, her designer clothes wrinkled as if she'd slept in them. "Dad, could we talk, please?" His paternal instincts stirred despite everything that had happened. "Come in, Lisa." She followed him to the living room, perching on the edge of the couch like a bird ready to take flight. Her hands twisted in her lap as she looked around the modest space that had once been her childhood home. "I'm so sorry about yesterday," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was just overwhelmed and scared. I wasn't thinking clearly." The tears came then, streaming down her cheeks with practiced precision. "Richard has been pressuring me so much about money lately. Our finances they're worse than I told anyone. I didn't know who else to turn to." Thomas settled into his recliner, maintaining careful distance between them. "What kind of financial trouble, Lisa?" "We're about to lose our house," she said, her voice breaking on the words. "The mortgage payments, the credit cards, Richard's business, it's all falling apart. We owe almost $400,000, and the bank is starting foreclosure proceedings." She painted a picture of sleepless nights, panic attacks, and desperate attempts to keep up appearances while their world crumbled. Richard's investment firm was failing, she claimed, losing clients and hemorrhaging money. The country club membership they couldn't afford to cancel. The private school tuition for Emily that was draining their resources.